Angela, so we get people to go on the street so people going by know what it's all about with the signs? People on the street facing out. Yes. As soon as people get out, I can tell them.
Starting in about 5 minutes. We're hoping to hear people extend down this way, so just heading east, down St. Clair.
And it is important that we don't block the sidewalk, that people can get by.
Could Bob Gardner please come to the front here? Thanks.
And if we can ask the speakers also to make their way up here.
Bob Gardner, can you come to the front, please? Please move a bit east so we can spread out with all our signs. Thanks very much. speakers please come to the front? Thanks very much.
Just a few quick business items. Please make sure the sidewalks are free for people who want to walk by or into the library. We also, for those of you who are tweeting, we have a hashtag. You press the number or pound key, IFH June 18. So thank you. Thank you for coming out to protest the meanest, most vicious, and most discriminatory government policy against refugees since the Second World War. The federal government changes the health care coverage for refugees have to be read to be believed. Make no mistake about it, the changes are devastating and drastic. The minister responsible, Jason Kenney, claims that the changes are insignificant and that we, critics in the health professions, do not understand that we are confusing categories of refugees, that in the case of real refugees not much has changed, that we have read the government document and the minister has never been forthright with Canadians about the changes. Here's what the changes mean. No medications for all classes of refugees, whether insulin for diabetics, heart medicine for refugees with angina, seizure medications for refugees with epilepsy. Psychiatric care will only be provided if the refugee is deemed to be a threat to public safety or a threat to others. If a refugee in any category is suicidal, they are on their own. No treatment. And if a refugee is from a so-called and allegedly safe country like the Roma from Hungary, there is not even emergency coverage for heart attacks or strokes. None is the word used by the federal government for emergency care coverage. Under these changes, refugees who arrive sick will remain sick, and those who become sick will receive little treatment. Believe you me, the Conservative government has not been honest with Canadians. The government says that refugees currently receive better care than other Canadians, and that the changes will bring refugee care in line with the health care other Canadians get. The government is dishonest. It is not telling the truth. We know, we have read the documents, the examples the government has given of ineligibility for medical care. Worse, the government has targeted certain refugees who endure persecution in their home country, like the Roma in Hungary and the Czech Republic, for near total exclusion from health care. Such refugees, even before their claims are heard, are deemed to be undeserving of care during pregnancy or for life-threatening conditions. It is enough. It's enough. The Conservative government has gone too far and is way out of touch with the Canadian values of fairness and just giving people a chance. Most Canadians have ancestors, recent or long ago, who came to Canada as refugees and immigrants. They will not be fooled by a full-on attack on refugees under the moral cover of cost savings and updating immigration policy. It is time for the federal government to stop bullying refugees who have no power, to stop pushing around those who are frightened and defenseless, and to stop picking on Roma and others fleeing persecution. It is time to stop the cuts to refugee health care. We have a number of speakers from different disciplines: nursing, social work, physicians, midwifery, etc. I'd now like to introduce the stellar Dr. Meb Rashid, who almost single-handedly has organized a 14-city protest across Canada. Meb.
Thank you. I remember it was about a month ago that we heard there was a small group of healthcare workers who were protesting these cuts. And as I look at this crowd, I realize there's an immense number of us across the country who are standing up to what's going to be happening as of July 1st. As we gather here today, we're joined by colleagues in 14 cities from coast to coast, from Vancouver to St. John's to Inuvik. There are demonstrations being held as we speak. And in between, there's demonstrations in Edmonton and Calgary, in Saskatoon and Winnipeg, in Hamilton, in Kitchener, in Windsor, in Waterloo, in Ottawa, and also in Halifax, in Montreal. We hear that Minister Kenney has already had a scrum on our National Day of Action. So we've caught someone's attention in Ottawa. All across the country, healthcare workers of various disciplines are joining the voices that are speaking out against these cuts that leave so many vulnerable people without access to healthcare. As we come together today, we have the support of almost all of our national organizations. This includes groups like the Canadian Medical Association, the College of Family Physicians and the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons, the Canadian Nurses Association, national bodies that represent pharmacists and optometrists, social workers. It's a tremendous group. Make no mistake, this is unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this from healthcare workers. And I thank you all for being here and speaking out for those that don't have a voice. It is our obligation. We came here today because we see refugee patients. We hear their stories of enduring war and living through torture, of being estranged from family. We also hear their stories of resiliency and their unrelenting desire to overcome these challenges and to be productive members of society. Together because what this government is going to do is to inflict tremendous hardship on people who've already suffered tremendously. I think of a gentleman who worked with Canadian troops in Afghanistan. He's been accepted to come to Canada with his family, and he's on the trajectory to become a Canadian citizen. As of June 30th, he'll no longer have insurance for the medications his family requires to treat their chronic illnesses. He'll have to choose between food for his children and the medication that he needs. This is inhumane. I quote a doctor, a very prominent physician, who suggests that refugees do not have the means to pay for their prescriptions without the assurance of this program, the IFH program. She goes on to say it is very important for convention refugees to receive treatment. It is also important to cover those groups for what we call supplementary coverage, for medication and all those things that may not be covered by health plans, although the plans cover them for people on social assistance, for example. We take all the provincial social assistance programs already in place and we adapt them. She goes on to say the IFH program is important for the refugees themselves, whatever category they are in. We're concerned about their state of health and provide the necessary care. Who said that? These quotes are from Dr. Danielle Grondin, who happens to be the head of the health branch at Citizenship and Immigration Canada. She signed off on the order that will implement these cuts to IFH. Yet it was only 18 months ago she made those statements. Well, Ms. Godin, well, Dr. Godin, what has changed since you made those comments less than 18 months ago? Are you no longer concerned about the health of refugees? Today we are hearing from healthcare workers across the country that these cuts will produce dire consequences for refugees and the communities that are receiving them. We are hoping the government listens and rescinds these cuts. But if not, if someone dies, if a child ends up in an ICU because they couldn't obtain the medication to treat their seizures or their asthma, if a pregnant woman has a poor outcome because she doesn't have access to prenatal care, it can be said that healthcare workers had warned the government about this. We will continue to bear witness to the consequences of these changes. We will continue to speak out for those that cannot. And if a catastrophe happens, we know where the responsibility will lie. As healthcare workers, we have spoken out resoundingly and unequivocally. This is our response to these inhumane cuts. Thank you.
I'm going to call up Nevenka Dushevich, who's a child and family worker at the Christie Refugee Welcome Center, where she's worked since 1996. She herself came from Sierra Leone in 1995, where she worked as a psychologist. Nevenka.
Hello, everybody. I'm a child and family worker at the Christie Refugee Welcome Center. I've been working with refugees and with refugee families for almost 16 years, going on a daily basis through their pain and struggle. I'm a social worker, and naturally my heart goes to millions of refugees around the world who are displaced and live in desperate situations. For many of them, Canada is a dream country, a country that provides safety and security to those whose days are filled with fears and risks of rape, persecution, starvation, and death. 17 years ago, I was one of them. I walked in their shoes and lived their stressful and fearful life. That experience gives me a right to raise my voice today and ask Canada, what will happen with people who leave everything behind and take horrific and terrifying journeys with the hope of finding safe place for their families? For these people, primary health care is the basic need, the same as food or water. Seriously, will Canada tell them, we don't care anymore if you have a heart attack, if your child has deadly allergies, or your wife is in a labor pain? How come that Canada decides to drastically cut services and punish the most vulnerable population, knowing that they do not have means to protect themselves? I wonder if any of those who voted for the cut have ever talked to a woman who was tortured or raped, a woman full of fear and mistrust. What will Canada be able to offer to her after June 30th? The scars in her body, her mind, and her heart will never go away if they are not treated, and soon her condition will be a threat to public health and safety. Have they ever had in their offices a sick child and hopeless crying mother? Do these mothers have a right to protect their children here after taking unbelievable journeys to protect them from all kinds of threats in their own countries, from their own violent fathers, from criminals and cruelty of racism and hatred? Canada was recognized for many years through beautiful, comforting, and welcoming words. I was a stranger and you took me in. Canada was and is an adoptive mother to many around the world. Does Canada suddenly forget that we are talking about people here? I can agree that heart disease does not pose a risk to public health. Diabetes is not a condition of public safety concern. But I cannot agree that a person who does need insulin and has no money, or a person with high blood pressure or stroke will not be treated or helped. Are we really going to watch them suffer or even die? Are we really telling them that we do not care anymore for a person without money and that they do not have a right to live a normal life? Are we saying that pregnant women will not have a right on a prenatal and postnatal care? Is the cut in providing refugees with preventative and primary health care the best and the only way how this country can save taxpayers' money? I doubt it. And my last question would be, if your family is threatened, what would you do? Stay and risk your lives or flee? Thank you very much.
We have people asking for a few chants, so I'm going to ask Angela Robertson and Rithika Goel to come up and 1 minute of chants for the audience.
What are we here for? Health care for who? Health care for who? Justice for who? Remember why we're here. We are here for who? Health care when? Health care for who? Settlement workers for? Doctors for? Midwives for? Canadians for? Immigrants for? Refugees for? Citizens for? Health care for who, people? Health care when? When do we want it? When will we get it? What do you say to Jason Kenney? Health care for who? Health care when? Pregnant women need what? Health care when? Prenatal care for? Children need what? Health care when? What do we want? Health care for who, people? Health care when? Now remember, we will take these streets, people, because we may not win, but they will not win. Health care when? What do we want? What are you telling Jason Kenney? What are you telling the federal government? Health care for who? Health care when? What do we want, people? Health care for who? Now keep on saying it. Health care for refugees. Health care for refugees. Health care for refugees. Health care for refugees. Refugees deserve a care. Health care for refugees. Health care for refugees. Refugees deserve a care. Health care for refugees. Canadians and people who live here, we say health care for refugees.
Thank you, Angela. Vanessa Wright, please come up. Vanessa's a nurse practitioner at the Crossroads Clinic at Women's College Hospital. She's been on numerous missions with MSF, and she's been a key organizer of this National Day of Action. Vanessa.
Today, not only as a nurse practitioner, but as a colleague, a friend, a learner, an advocate, and a Canadian citizen. I feel so privileged to be all those things, but mostly I feel privileged to call myself a sister amongst my neighbors, colleagues, passers-by on the street, and the patients I treat in my place of employment. Many are government-assisted refugees and refugee claimants, but likely you wouldn't even know, because they too are calling themselves your sister and brother and thrive given the opportunity. I became a nurse practitioner because I believe in what the role stands for, to restore, maintain, advance the health of individuals, groups, and communities, with the emphasis of health promotion as well as illness and injury prevention. Over 10 years ago, in 2002, the Romano Report emphasized the need for primary health care reform. This is nothing new. In knowing that primary health care is the foundation of Ontario's healthcare system, why then, I ask Minister Kenney, are we backpedaling? Yes. Every day my work schedule is filled with patients who are refugee claimants and government-assisted refugees, attempting to do just what our healthcare system has asked, to maintain and advance their personal health through primary health care. As a nurse practitioner that has worked both in acute and in community care settings, I am left in awe of these patients. I didn't become a nurse practitioner to work within a sea of contradiction. It doesn't just stop here. On July 1st, when a refugee claimant comes into the clinic I practice with a positive pregnancy test, what am I to do, Minister Kennedy? What am I to do? her in the eye and I'll thank her for coming. And I will try through every angle possible to give her the best possible health care that she deserves, that we all deserve. Like many of our colleagues, I've also worked with refugees and internally displaced people in developing countries. I have seen firsthand the plight that many displaced persons have had to face in countries uprooted by war. In light of these recent IFH cuts, I question the paradox between the term developing and developed country, like Canada calls itself. What strikes me as ultimately important to emphasize here is that you do not have to travel to developing countries to meet people affected and uprooted by war. These people could be you, they could be your neighbors, they could be your colleagues, they likely are your friends, and they will be your sister and brother just like they will call you your sister and brother. Because of all of this, and the patients I sit from across day after day in my exam room, I know and we know what sound and just health care is. And we will never lose sight of this. Because, my friends, this is the Canada that I want. This is the Canada that we want. And this is the Canada that is capable of being. Yeah!
I just want to apologize to the people across the street. I know you can't hear us, but keep on cheering, keep on chanting. You're doing a great job. Look fantastic. I'm going to call Dr. Raghu Ganigapal. He's an emergency room physician at the Toronto General Hospital, and with a few other physicians who was responsible for getting the Emergency Doctors Association of Canada to pass a resolution opposing these cuts. Raghu!
Brothers and sisters, 200 years ago today, Canada fought the War of 1812. Now fighting. 200 years ago, Canada fought the War of 1812, defining the future of this country. We are here today to fight another battle, defining the future of this country today. As a Toronto emergency doctor, I am extremely concerned about these healthcare cuts against refugees. We are denying Canadian refugees basic medical care, and their health will decompensate as a result of these cuts, and they will come to our emergency rooms in greater and greater numbers. Brothers and sisters, this is not the Canada that I know. This is not the Canada that we know. Asthmatics will present with decompensated situations requiring ICU admissions. Diabetics are going to present in a coma, and they may even die. And this is not the Canada that I know. As well, picture our patients with mental health disorders. They may commit suicide. They may harm themselves because of medications and therapy that they are denied. And this is not the Canada that I know as a doctor. Contrary to Minister Kenny's position, as a result of cutting ambulatory and preventative care, patients will come to the emergency room in greater and greater numbers, and they will require more medical care and more expensive medical care, costing the Canadian taxpayer more money, and this is not the Canada that I know. Like my sister Vanessa, I too have had the privilege of working around the world in countries facing war and privation. I have worked with refugees around the world, and I have seen countries deny health care only for the privileged few. And this is not the way we do it in Canada. This is not my country, ladies and gentlemen. Refugees, my sisters and brothers, have so much to offer Canada. They come to this country
with bravery, with dedication, and with a sense of new hope. Refugees bring to this country the fiber that made this country so great as what it once was. And now Minister Kenny is trying to change that, and shame on Minister Kenny. It was a Canadian lawyer, my brothers and sisters, a Canadian lawyer called John Peters Humphreys, who wrote the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And what does the Universal Declaration of Rights says? In Article number 25, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to which Canada is a signatory, said that all men, women, and children are allowed 4 rights. The right to food, the right to shelter, the right to clothing, and Minister Kenny, the right to medical care. Minister Kenny, if you can hear me in that building across the street, health care is a right for all. Health care, Minister Kenny, is a human right. Minister Kenny, you cannot wage a war against health care to deny people their right to seek refuge in Canada because of persecution around the world. Health care, Mr. Kenny, is a right for all. Lastly, Minister Kenny, with all due respect to your position and your authority, no matter what you do, Minister Kenny, no matter what decisions you take, the nurses, the midwives, the doctors who are assembled here and across the country today, we will uphold our obligation. We will uphold our obligation. Minister Kenny, we have an obligation. We swore when we took upon these professions that we would provide equitable health care for all Canadians, be them new or be them old or be them here for 5 generations. We swore upon that oath, Minister Kenny, and we intend to uphold our obligations to all Canadians. Lastly, Minister Kenny, if you can hear this message, the nurses, doctors, and midwives, we swear to uphold our oaths, and we promise to you that we will provide professional, fair, and compassionate medical care to you, Mr. Kenny, to your family, to your loved ones, and to all Canadians and refugees. Thank you.
Thank you, Raghu. I want to call on Dr. Tatiana Ferrer-Lazama, who is a doctor who cares for women with high-risk pregnancy. She's a perinatologist at St. Michael's Hospital, an assistant professor at the University of Toronto, and more important, she came to Canada with her family as a child, as a political refugee from Chile. Tatiana.
It's amazing to see everybody here today. This makes me very happy. My name is Tatiana. I'm a perinatologist. I look after women with complicated pregnancies. I'm here today because I want to speak up for some of my most vulnerable patients. And thank you, each and every one of you, for coming here today to try to speak up for them, to try to protect the health of refugees and the health of our healthcare system. Refugees don't come to Canada to take advantage of our healthcare system. Refugees come to Canada fleeing some of the worst life situations that any of us can imagine. They come fleeing war and oppression and violence. They leave their homes, they leave their jobs, they leave their languages and their families. They arrive in Canada with literally nothing. I know this firsthand. I arrived in Canada as a refugee when I was a child with nothing, and I remember what that was like. If these plan changes to interim federal health take effect, it will mean that at this awful time in their lives, most refugees will not have access to needed medications. At this terrible time in their lives, some refugees will be denied primary health care and will only have access to any health care at all after their health condition has become an emergency. Refugees with diabetes will not get insulin. Refugees with heart disease will not be able to afford their medications. At this terrible time in their lives, pregnant refugees, the women that I care for, they will go without vitamins or medications for vomiting or for high blood pressure. Some will get no prenatal care at all. Their children will go without vaccinations. Refugees who have undergone severe traumas will not have access to needed mental health care. I want everybody to know we're not talking about theoretical people, we're talking about real human beings. Right now I'm caring for a refugee woman who has requested that I deliver her child prematurely. Why? Because on July 1st she believes she will have to pay for her care and she cannot afford it. Right now, I am caring for a woman who witnessed the violent death of her family in her home country. She needs medication in order to sleep. We are not talking about statistics. We're talking about expectant mothers. We're talking about women who came to Canada looking for shelter. And this legislation is about to make their lives just a little bit harder. The federal government has told us not to worry, that refugees with illnesses that are a public health concern, they will get treatment. But what does this mean? Is it okay if a person seeking refuge in Canada dies from heart disease or untreated diabetes, so long as they don't infect the rest of us with tuberculosis? Is that okay? No! How are we going to know if a refugee is sick with tuberculosis if we're denying people primary health care? The federal government has said that these changes will make Canada's refugee system more fair. The federal government has said they will save Canadian taxpayer dollars. But how is it fair if we fail to provide vulnerable people with needed care or needed medications? How is it cost effective to treat emergencies and refugees who have not had access to primary health care? We all know it costs less to prevent the emergency by caring for them in the first place. All of us are here today to speak up for refugees. Many of these folks have come through terrible life situations. My family and I, we were very lucky to be received in Canada by warm and caring people. I'm not the only physician in my family. My mother's here. She's a psychiatrist who has been working with victims of torture for many years. My sister's here. She's a midwife. Today's refugees, they deserve to land in a country that cares about them too. They have a right to health care. They have a right to the medication that they need. We are here today because we believe that Canada is a humane country. We believe that Canada is a place of hope for the people who seek refuge here. We believe in a fair and affordable health care system, and these changes to refugee health care are an attack on all our beliefs. Let's make sure together that Ottawa hears us. Thank you.
Tara was saying these people are not statistics. They're real people who are going to endure suffering because of federal government policy. I want to call Arsema Akbat to tell us a little story about someone who's directly affected. Arsema.
Hello everyone, my name is Arsema Akbat. I'm a clinic coordinator at the Evangel Home. I'm working helping homeless and poor people to get medical, dental and medical service. And then I'm here to speak out for one refugee person that I know, a woman with 3 kids, teenager kids, and then she's on a dialysis and high blood pressure, and then she's got a letter that she's not going to get any medical coverage. And then not only her medication, every single day I see her crying and crying and crying, and then I couldn't afford to see this. And then I'm here just to fight to stop this medical health cutting. Thank you for hearing me.
Sue Ranovich is a primary health care nurse practitioner who's been providing care to the inner city of Toronto and marginalized inner city communities for over 20 years. Sue.
Thank you all, and thank you for being here today. And I'm coming here today as a fellow healthcare provider, but also as a fellow human being who cares. And I know that's what brought you here today as well. And we all share a common Canadian belief. And what is that? We all know that health care is a basic human right. But humane health care is also a basic human right. I know that many Canadians, and some of whom we provide health care to, also share in these beliefs. And they're behind us as we demand a complete withdrawal to these IFH cuts right now. I have had the great privilege of providing nursing care for over 20 years to our most marginalized community members, that being immigrants and refugees, and that care has been provided in a variety of community settings. What have I seen? I've encountered many patients over the years who've come to Canada with post-traumatic stress disorder. This was due to experiencing and witnessing violence and rape against themselves and against their own family members in their countries of origin. And that manifested as extreme depression and anxiety. Under these inhumane interim federal health cuts, these patients would only be covered if they were deemed to be homicidal. That meaning at risk to harm to others. They would not be covered if they were suicidal or at risk of harm to themselves. I say shame. These cuts will be restricted to, quote, urgent or essential care. But by avoiding, if we could just avoid urgent care, and that would be by providing preventative health care. That is the basis of our primary health care system right now. Primary care now for all. As a primary health care nurse practitioner, I am focused on health promotion, illness prevention, and education as part of holistic patient-centered care. But I will no longer be able to provide the minimum level of care to our most marginalized community members. I say shame. I raise my hands in frustration because I know I'm going to need to send patients to their local emergency departments for basic primary care, such as asthma inhaler or insulin for their diabetes. Prenatal care and well baby visits will no longer be the standard of care as recommended by the Canadian Pediatric Society. And these moms and babies will increasingly end up in our emergency departments in crisis situations. This is not a cost savings to Canada, and it is morally reprehensible. I say shame. But these problems do not exist only in primary health care. There are patients who will lose absolutely everything after June the 30th. A nursing colleague of mine who works in the long-term sector told me about a number of patients who will lose their housing, meaning their long-term care bed. They will lose their physical and occupational therapy. They will lose their wheelchairs. And last but not least, they will lose their oxygen therapy coverage. I say shame. Stop the cuts now. 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 Let Jason Kennedy hear you people. No. Stop the cuts now. Stop the cuts now. What do you tell Jason Kennedy? What do you tell the Harper government? Stop the cuts now. Stop the cuts now. Toronto have been occupied by workers who are saying, we want here for.
Thank you, Angela. Dr. Catherine Rouleau is a committed Canadian and a family doctor in Toronto within her city at St. Michael's Hospital. She's the director of the Global Health Program at the University of Toronto Department of Family and Community Medicine. Catherine.
So I have to start with a question. What are we doing here, and what is this country? Why is it that on a Monday afternoon, on the verge of summer, all of us, busy as we are, have to take time away to try to make our voices heard to the leadership of this country? Where are we? Où est-ce qu'on est? Dans quelle sorte de pays est-ce qu'on est pour qu'un lundi après-midi, on est ici à prendre le temps d'essayer de convaincre le leadership d'écouter et de faire entendre la voix des plus vulnérables, de ceux qui sont déjà sans voix? C'est abominable. I am here because, like many of you, I have the exquisite privilege of spending my days providing primary care to human beings, all human beings. Some of them were born here and some were not. Some came early and some came late. And in all cases, they never, ever, ever identify themselves primarily to me as a refugee. Because fundamentally, they are human beings. That is what they want to be. Of course they have had experiences that we need to take into consideration. Of course that is why we are here today, because they need us to band with them, to have our voices join with them, for them to have justice. But fundamentally, refugees are first and foremost human beings. They are like us, and they are like me. And I could spend a lot of time echoing some of the comments of my very eloquent colleagues and tell you about all of the health conditions and all of the many ways that the health of my patients who happen to be refugees will be affected. But instead, I'm going to tell you about another interface of my life and refugees. The very first so-called refugee I interacted with, who actually, again, never identified himself as such, was a classmate of mine in medical school. Today, that remarkable individual who overcame huge odds is a plastic surgeon who spends his days reconstructing hands. That is what happens to refugees when you give them a chance to become everything they can be. I have another close acquaintance who happens to be the father of my godson, who also came here as a refugee, also never called himself a refugee. He is now, after coming to this country with a shirt on his back, like the stories we heard today, is working for the CIBC. His kids are in your kids' soccer teams. His daughter dances ballet with all of your children. They spend their days longing for the same thing that you and I long for, participating in this community, being part of this amazing country that is ours. That's what happens to refugees when you give them the chance to become everything that they have a right to become. Il y a des réfugiés dans mon environnement qui passent leur journée avec leurs enfants dans l'école de ma fille. C'est les parents des amis de ma fille. Ils font du bénévolat dans les écoles, ils apprennent aux enfants à lire, ils font partie de la communauté. They are there, they represent all the richness of what they came from. They represent the richness of this country that clearly some leadership is trying to undermine. It is our responsibility to recognize that healthcare, the right to healthcare, is far, far greater than the right to pills. It is the right of human beings to be everything they have a right to be. Because not only do they need us to fight for them, we need them. We need them to become our our doctors and our teachers and our colleagues and our inspiration together as one country, as Canadians who no longer make the distinction about who's worth it and not worth it, who deserves and doesn't deserve, who has a right and who doesn't have a right. On a tous le droit à la santé. And so, Mr. Kenny, and all those of you who put your signature to these documents, I want you to look in your communities, identify these people who you so-call refugees, and think about what they contribute to your community. Remind yourself that we are all in this together. We are one Canada. We will not stop fighting for one Canada, one healthy, rightful, united, and rightfully healthy Canada.
So our next speaker is Fatima Udan, who's a recent graduate of family medicine from the University of Toronto, who's also the daughter of Bangladeshi refugees. She currently works at the National Wabi Health Center and the St. Joseph's Hospital.
Dear friends, it is so nice to see you all take time from your busy lives to come here today to speak up for the most vulnerable among us. For those refugees speaking today, I am astounded by your courage. Thank you. I'm a family physician. As you heard, I recently graduated from the University of Toronto with a fellowship in Aboriginal health. Most of my time is spent serving the First Peoples of Canada, those who were here long before you or me or the immigrant forefathers of those who run our country, those who have welcomed us all to this land. Today I'm speaking to you not as a physician, but as a former refugee. My parents came to Canada in 1991 fleeing political persecution in their native Bangladesh. Arriving in their middle age with small children, they were greeted by a Canada that was kind and welcoming. Within days of arriving, my father's family doctor became concerned about his health and sent him for tests that revealed early colon cancer. He was immediately treated and went on to live for 15 more years. Productive years. Yesterday was Father's Day. When I thought of my father yesterday, I thought of how lucky it was that we arrived in a country where he could access good primary care. And how I may have been robbed of 15 more years with him if we had landed on some other shore, like Jason Kenney's Canada. My parents knew how lucky they were to have good health care, to be able to live in good health with chronic diseases like diabetes and schizophrenia, to be able to be healthy enough to look after their young children. Every moment thereafter, they spent giving back to their country. Just this week, my mother was in the news. A grassroots organization that she started, known as the Regent Park Women and Families, spent the past year sewing a quilt about the revitalization of Regent Park, the community where my sister and I grew up. This quilt was unveiled this week to the public and the media with great pomp and circumstance. In her speech, my mother spoke of community and of taking care of each other. In Jason Kenney's Canada, we don't take care of each other. My father would never have seen a family doctor because he was a refugee. He would not have been able to afford the test that revealed his early colon cancer. My parents' chronic illnesses would have gone unchecked and untreated as they waited for deportation and or citizenship. I would not have had two healthy parents present in my life to guide me into adulthood. I would not have been inspired to go into my profession. Today I am a proud Canadian. I'm a physician trying to use my skills to serve those who need them the most in this land. I'm speaking today for my 9-year-old self, for my siblings, for my parents, and for all those current and future refugees who deserve the same chance that my family and I got. Without that chance, we will be losing some of our strongest citizens. Thank you.
I want to introduce you to Gina Shani Roba, who's the Executive Director of the Roma Community Center located in Toronto. The Roma have been a particular target of this government. Gina.
amazed I am today by the turnout and by the incredible support that our Canadian community is exemplifying for a significantly large community of Romani refugee claimants in Canada right now. I want to thank all of our doctors, nurses, dentists, healthcare professionals that have made today possible. Every single time this government has punched down, slammed down, kicked down, and hurt this community across Canada, shaming us and not giving us an ounce of decent dignity and respect from the terrible conditions that our community continues to flee from in countries that some people are trying to consider giving a green light as being safe. There has been approximately 30,000 Romani refugees from Central and Eastern Europe coming into Canada over the past 3 years. We are a significant community that needs help, and there is nothing that makes me feel more encouraged than by seeing all of these wonderful faces here today. I thank you profusely on behalf of the Roma community in Canada. So I am the child as well as the grandchild of refugees that had come from Hungary in 1956. I'm a Hungarian Roma Canadian. And I am so proud of Canadians today. And I am so proud of my Roma community today who's managed to come out. Oklahoma! In our language, Opre means raise up. In the Romanesque language, it means raise up. So when I say Oklahoma, I'm telling the Roma community to raise up, feel empowered, have a voice, stand up for their rights, and join the larger community in fighting for human rights for everybody. So today is about Opre human rights. Today is about Opre human rights because all of us are standing in solidarity together, demanding health care for some of the world's most vulnerable people that often do not have a voice to speak for themselves. So, the largest Roma community living outside of the European continent now lives in Parkdale. Toronto is the home to the largest Roma community outside of Europe. There are 150 Hungarian Roma children attending schools in 3 public schools in Parkdale. If these cuts to refugee health care take place, it's going to be devastating to the community across the city, across the country, but especially in Parkdale, where there's 3,000 Roma families alone living in that neighborhood. We have people that have diabetes. We have people that have serious heart problems. We have children that have illnesses. We have pregnant women. We deserve to make sure that these people are taken care of while they are inside our Canadian shores and on our Canadian lands. We are a humanitarian country. We are a compassionate country. We have Canadian values and principles that are not negotiable. And we cannot negotiate these with different governments and administrations that may be in power at a time. These are Canadian values that must stay in place the same way our Canadian flag does and the same way our Canadian national anthem does. They are not negotiable. I will represent the Roma Community Center, and we will try our best to bring awareness to a number of different detrimental things that are contained in this bill. this case, debt. We do not support that. So I just want to leave off by saying, Opre Roma, Opre Human Rights, Opre Canada, we love you.
Okay, thank you, Gina. Well, we have an important speaker who's involved in giving life to new babies. Manavi Honda is a faculty member at Ryerson University, a practicing midwife for the last 12 years, who knows better than most the effect these cuts are going to have on newborn babies and their mothers. Manavi.
It's so great to see how many people have turned out tonight, how many healthcare workers across all parts of our healthcare system have come out to speak. I think it really shows the drastic effects that these healthcare cuts are going to have. I'm here speaking as a midwife, and there are thousands of midwives across Canada who are also speaking out about this issue. The proposed IFH cuts will result in a drastic number of increased women with no access to prenatal care. Prenatal care is well known to be one of the most cost-effective interventions in healthcare, and inadequate prenatal care will result in much sicker mothers and babies. This will not save our healthcare system money. Under these new cuts, there are thousands of pregnant women today who are threatened with loss of complete access in the middle of their pregnancy to any prenatal care or care for their newborn children. Make no mistake, these cuts will have direct impact on women and their children. Under these new cuts, women who need access to essential medications who are having complicated pregnancies, women who have hypertensive disorder in pregnancy, diabetes in pregnancy, will no longer receive these essential medications, resulting in much worse pregnancy outcomes and much sicker babies. These babies, by definition, are Canadian. Make no mistake, under these cuts, we will have sicker Canadian babies. This will not save our healthcare system money. I just want to also say that healthcare for pregnant women should be a complete right, regardless of refugee status. There are hundreds and thousands of women across Canada right now who are terrified that they're going to lose their coverage. We heard from another obstetrician earlier that there was a woman who actually wanted to deliver her baby prematurely because she's wondering how these costs will affect her care and her newborn. Under these new cuts, a postpartum or pregnant woman who is suicidal will have no right to prenatal care. That is not Canada. I was talking to a friend of mine recently about these cuts, and she said to me, this is not my Canada. And I say that to you, this is not my Canada. This is McKenny's Canada, and we will not let this become his Canada.
One last speaker is Hazel Stewart here. Dr. Hazel Stewart is a dentist. She's actually more than a dentist. She's the director of dental services at Toronto Public Health, and we're thrilled to have her here as our last speaker, Hazel.
Thank you. We're here today because we care. We care about people, and we need policies that care about people. This is what the mouths of people who have been in the refugee camps for a long time, this is what it looks like.
Doctors, tell them to stop the cut to refugee health care and make Canada Day in 2012 a year of pride, not a day of shame. Thank you. Angela.
So, the folks across the street, so you have heard our last speaker, but this is not the last. So this is just the beginning for the next 6 days. Let us occupy the airwaves with messages to Jess Kenny. And what are we going to say? Health care for who? Health care when? Health your workplaces, into your communities, into your parks, into your homes. Take this media, take this message for refugees into your homes, into your workplaces, into your mosques, into your churches, into your shelters. Take this call for refugees where? Stop the cuts now! Stop the cuts now! Stop the cuts now! Look out for more action on Canada Day if Jason Kenney does not listen to you. Take this message to Canada Day because this is not a welcome you stand for. This is not a welcome you stand for on Canada Day when thousands of people will be told no health care for you. Just because Jason Kenney said what? No care for refugees. What we want? We want care for refugees. Health care for who? Refugees. Health care when? What do we want? Health care when? Health care for who? What do we want? We're wrapping up, people, because I know some of you are on borrowed time from the workplace and or not, but you are here. So health care for who? Health care when? Health care for who? Let Jason Kenney hear you. Health care for who? Let the people on the streetcar hear you. Health care when? Health care for who? Let the police officers who have supported us here today hear you say, health care for who? Health care when? I see officers' hands went up. That means they support us. So we want health care when? Health care for who? Health care when? Health care for who? Health care when? Health care for refugees. Health care for refugees. Health care for refugees. Health care for refugees. I know you don't want to leave. I know you don't want to leave. But people, health care for refugees. Health care for refugees. Come across and join this group on this side so we can turn to Jason Kenney's building to say health care for who? Health care for refugees. 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 Canada for refugees. Canada for refugees. Health care for whom? Health care for whom? Health care for whom? Health care for whom? Canada for refugees. Canada for refugees. Health care for whom? Health care for whom? Health care for whom, people? Health care for whom? Health care for all. Health care for refugees. 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 Health care for all. We stand in solidarity for refugees. We stand in solidarity for refugees. We stand in solidarity for refugees. Access to care for refugees. We stand in solidarity for refugees. Health care for. Health care for. Health care for refugees. Health care for refugees. Health care for. Health care for. Health care for. We are starting a movement, people. We are starting a movement. We're continuing a movement of protest against regressive cuts to immigrants, to refugees, to people of colored communities. We're saying no to xenophobia. We're saying no to regressive policies. We're saying yes to health care for refugees. 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 We're standing beside comrades, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles who will fuel this movement as we tell Jason Kenney, what do we want? Health care for who? 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 Health care for refugees. Health care for refugees. Remember, refugees will not be able to get tired if Jason Kenney's bill passes. If Jason Kenney's guidelines get amended, refugees will not be able to get tired. Refugees will not have the right to get sick. Refugees need care. What do we say to Jason Kenney? Health care for don't want to leave, nor do I. But, you know, we know that we will come back again if these cuts are not cut. So what do we want? One last, we're going to give them 3 times. Yeah? So, 1, 2, 3. Healthcare for? Healthcare for? Come on, we need to end off, people. Healthcare for? Healthcare for? Stop the cuts. Stop the cuts. Stop the cuts. Stop the cuts. Stop the cuts against refugees when? Stop the cuts. Stop the cuts. Tell Jason Kelly, stop the cuts. Stop the cuts when? Stop the cuts now. Stop the cuts now. Stop the cuts now. Healthcare for refugees, stop the cuts now. Healthcare for refugees, stop the cuts now. Healthcare for refugees, stop the cuts now. Take that message to every MP. Stop the cuts now. Stop the cuts now. Stop the cuts now. Healthcare for refugees, 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 stop the cuts now. Remember, people, you have just occupied the corner of St. Clair and Young. All refugees. This will not happen without protest. This will not happen without protest. Healthcare for who? Healthcare when? Healthcare for who? Healthcare when? Healthcare for who? Healthcare when? Police officers for refugees. Healthcare for refugees, refugees, healthcare. Healthcare for refugees, refugees, healthcare. Health workers for refugees. Healthcare for refugee access to healthcare. Social workers for refugee access to healthcare. Shelter workers for access to healthcare for refugees. Come on, people. Let them know who you are here. So if you're here with an organization, let us shout out the name of the sector that you belong to for refugees. So, healthcare administrators for refugees. Doctors for refugees. Nurses. Midwives for refugees. Teachers for refugees. Shelter workers. Public health workers. Settlement workers. Healthcare for who? Healthcare for refugees, refugees need healthcare. Healthcare for refugees, refugees need healthcare. Healthcare for refugees, refugees need healthcare. Healthcare when? No. Stop the cuts when? Healthcare when? Stop the cuts when? Stop the cuts now. 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 I know you don't want to leave. I know you don't want to leave. But nobody ever leaves a protest. Yeah? So you take the protest wherever you go because you're here with conviction. You're here with conviction that healthcare must be accessible for all refugees. Healthcare when? No. Healthcare for who? Stop the cuts when? Healthcare for who? Healthcare when? Stop the cuts when? Stop the cuts when? Healthcare when? Healthcare for who? Healthcare for who? Healthcare when? Healthcare for who? Healthcare for who? Healthcare workers for who? Healthcare workers for who? Dietitians for who? Policy makers for who? Healthcare for who? Healthcare when? Stop the cuts when? Stop the cuts now. Stop the cuts now. Healthcare for refugees, stop the cuts now. Healthcare for refugees, stop the cuts now. Healthcare for refugees, stop the cuts now. Health care for refugees, stop the cuts now. We need to build protest movements, people. Health care for refugees, stop the cuts now. Health care for refugees, refugees need health care. Health care for refugees, stop the cuts when?
No!
Stop the cuts when?
No!
Stop the cuts when? Take this message back to your organization. Stop the cuts when? Stop the cuts when?
No!
Stop the cuts when? Stop the cuts when? Health care for who? Stop the cuts when? And I'm dying people, so I'm gonna give it up. Health care for refugees.
Thank you to everyone for coming. You just you check out your iPhones or your Blackberries if you're so inclined. And Twitter or email Jason Kenney now. Keep at it over the next 12 days and let's change this policy.